Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all feeling awake and energetic for today's session. Hope you've enjoyed GSTC so far. It's our second day, and very, very grateful to be here this morning moderating this upcoming panel. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Lee Howard. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Tropico Group of Companies, and this morning we will be talking a little bit about cruise, yachts, ports and destination. Maritime tourism, whether through cruise ships or private yachts, brings both opportunity and responsibility. Its footprint touches fragile ecosystems and local communities, making thoughtful stewardship essential. As we navigate the future of tourism across small islands and coastal regions, we must ask not only how we grow, but how do we grow sustainably? This session will explore complex dynamics between vessels, ports, and the destinations they serve. Our panelists this morning will discuss the environmental, social, and economic impacts of maritime tourism, highlighting strategies to minimize negative effects while maximizing benefits. We'll examine how infrastructure can be developed with environmental sensitivity, how maritime tourism can evolve with sustainability at its core, and how destinations, especially those less visited, can build resilience and thrive. We'll also turn our attention to the role of cruise lines and DMOs, destination management organizations, how they can contribute to leaving destinations better than they found them, how can tourism be dispersed in a way that can empower communities rather than concentrate benefits in just a few places. Ultimately, this conversation this morning is about stewardship. It's about ensuring that maritime tourism supports, not strains, the cultural, ecological, and economic fabric of our destinations. And it's about fostering partnerships that prioritize long-term well-being over short-term gain. I'm really honoured to be joined by a panel of experts who bring deep insight and practical experiences to these questions. Their perspectives will help us chart a course toward a more sustainable and inclusive maritime tourism future. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, can I please welcome all of our wonderful panelists to the stage. And they are Mr. Joel Katz, Managing Director of Clear Australasia, by Harry Lissan, who's the CEO of Tahiti Tourism, Jacinta Lau, who is the Director for MTCA, Ministry of Tourism Civil Aviation, and Elizabeth Tavana, all the way from Sawini Village, who left, I believe, very early this morning, around 4 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. It was yesterday. There we go. Just a little bit about our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, Joel will be coming up to speak first. Joel joined Clear in January of 2027, bringing with him more than 25 years of international experience in the travel industry. His most recently served as Executive Vice President of Grand Circle Cruise Line. Prior to that, he worked in Australia as Chief Operating Officer for Orion Expedition Cruises and Limbo. He has worked with both the Hyatt and Marriott hotel companies, and John started his career in the cruise industry, working both on board and the shore side for Orient Lines. In his role as Managing Director of Clear Australasia, Joel heads up a Sydney-based team that is responsible for promotion and development of the cruise industry in the region through trade relations, industry training and advocacy activities on behalf of the cruise line members. By Harry is the CEO for Tourism Tahiti. Born and raised in the islands of Tahiti, she graduated in a leading business school. She began her career in marketing consultancy in Paris, and upon returning to the islands of Tahiti in 2010, she continued her career in marketing with the telecommunications sector. Since joining Tahiti Tourism in 2014, she has held key leadership roles, culminating in her position as Chief Marketing Officer for the past decade. Her responsibilities have included destination branding, multi-market communication strategies, and the management of marketing, communication, and web marketing services both locally and internationally. She also oversaw Tahiti Tourism's 18 B2C websites and digital tools, ensuring the organization's global reach and efficiency. More recently, as part of French Polynesia's 2030 Sustainable Tourism Plan, she has collaborated closely with local tourism authorities to drive long-term strategic initiatives in favour of responsible tourism and development. And she has recently assumed the role of CEO since mid-May 2025, so congratulations. And our next panelist is Jacinta. Jacinta, originally from Vanuatu, Fiji's second largest island, is a dedicated public sector leader with over a dedicated decade of experience in the tourism sector. She earned her degree from the University of South Pacific in 2013 before joining the Fijian government. And she has held several roles with the Ministry of Tourism and was appointed Director of Tourism in November 2022. Jacinta is a passionate public sector leader with over a decade of experience in the tourism sector and specialises in national strategies and policies that drive sustainable tourism growth and economic development in Fiji. She plays a key role in overseeing Fiji's 10-year National Sustainable Tourism Framework. And last, ladies and gentlemen, is Ili, all the way from Saweni Village, which is just outside of Suva, where she has lived for 47 years, marrying her late husband. Originally from Bua, Vanuatu, she is a proud alumna of Andi Dakambara School, and in 1988 earned a diploma in secretarial studies from Fiji Institute of Technology, followed by a diploma in frontline tourism management from the Fiji National University. Since the passing of her husband in January 2024, she has found comfort and purpose in continuing their shared work within the Fiji tourism industry. As a tour coordinator of Saweni Village, she is passionate about her role and grateful for the valuable experience gained through this association. Ladies and gentlemen, please round of applause for our panelists. As with all our sessions, folks, we will be having Snapshot, which will provide a bit of a summary overview of all of our sessions and discussions today. I'm not sure, there we go, we have a QR code where you can scan and we'll have those session summaries brought to you live. In addition, we also have at the end of our session a Q&A, and we will have Slido for that. So if you have not use Slido, please make sure you register, and also to enter in GSTC2025 and choose the correct room type, which is French apparently. Okay, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I am now going to invite Joel up to take us through his presentation. Vinaka.
Thank you, Lee. There we go. Hola. It's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. CLIA has been a partner with the GSTC on some important projects over the years, and I'm glad to be here today to be able to talk about the principles that are guiding our work internationally and to participate in this panel discussion. Firstly, I thought I might just give a quick, brief update on where the global cruise industry is and the opportunities that are ahead of us in cruise tourism. I'm pleased to say that cruising is thriving all over the world right now. A total of 34.6 million people took an ocean cruise last year, which is 9% more than the previous year. The recovery of cruise post-pandemic has actually been faster than tourism in general. We're seeing more cruise guests, more first-time cruisers, and whole new generations of travellers joining us at sea. The average age of a cruise passenger is now just 46 years, and a third of our cruise guests are under the age of 40. So those days of cruising being for they used to say the newlywed or the nearly dead, are long gone. Cruise lines are successfully attracting new markets, new cruisers, and the intention to cruise amongst consumers is at an all-time high. So with these and the many other factors in mind, CLIA is forecasting continued passenger growth well into the future, and globally we are likely to see further increases this year and for much of the decade. But, of course, despite this, it's still important to remember that cruise is very much a niche area of tourism, and notwithstanding that, in many cases we have some very large ships that sit in the middle of harbours, we actually only represent less than 2% of global tourism. It's smaller than you may think, but it means it still delivers a very large economic contribution and therefore presents a large opportunity, as Lee mentioned. So to cater for those growing markets internationally, cruise lines are working hard to develop the fleet of the future. The current world order book lists 81 new cruise ships due to launch through to 2036, and that's more than a $70 billion investment in the future. And importantly, these ships have a 30-year lifespan, so they are amongst the cleanest and most energy efficient ships that have ever sailed. Because as an industry, decarbonisation is probably our most important mission right now. Clear cruise lines around the world are working towards net zero emissions by 2050, and as a result are investing heavily in the sustainable fuels and the technologies that will take us there. The ships that are sailing now will be the ships that will take us into the 2030s, 40s and 50s. Cruise ships are already sailing today with the ability to use fuels like methanol, biofuels, what others are exploring, hydrogen, fuel cell technologies, and hybrid solutions. The reality, though, is that there isn't a perfect solution yet, but as an industry, we're focused on making sure that we're positioned to be able to take advantage of those new technologies, new fuels, as they do come to fruition in a way that allows them to be available and, of course, safe. And as an industry, we're determined to take a leadership role in destination stewardship. And we're proud of the collaborations between cruise lines and destinations around the world, where visitation is scheduled and managed responsibility with community benefits always top of mind. Globally, our industry contributes more than 168 billion US to local economies in destinations all around the world and creates jobs for more than 1.6 million people. To demonstrate our value, Clear Cruise Lines aspire to uphold a series of guiding principles, what we call the guiding principles for responsible cruise tourism. And that really reflects both current practice but also a shared commitment to progress and partnership. And those are things like destination stewardship initiatives that uplift communities, safeguard culture and assets, and of course ensure long-term viability for those communities. Obviously working in partnership with communities to ensure that what we do aligns with the goals of those communities, and ultimately, as Lee said, leaves those destinations better off. Helps to strengthen local businesses and communities by supporting creation of jobs, sourcing produce, foods and supplies locally, and of course encouraging visitor spending in the destination, while always seeking to preserve the culture and identity and heritage of those destinations. And this is all underpinned by having good governance, transparency, shared objectives, and collaborative planning. As one of the most managed forms of tourism, ship itineraries are often scheduled 2 or more years in advance, which really does provide the time and the opportunity for close cooperation with local communities and authorities. Ships don't just arrive. Cruise lines now will be planning they've already released their 27 itineraries, they're planning their 28, and they already have an idea what they're going to be doing in 29 and 30, and starting those conversations with communities. So in this way, cruise tourism really can serve as a model for planned, sustainable tourism growth. Those really long lead times help to identify and mitigate potential visitor pressure points, coordinate port operations with logistical requirements, special events, and of course to be able to develop new itineraries and shore excursion options that spread the benefits more broadly. One of the most meaningful ways that cruise lines can put responsible tourism into practice is through that direct collaboration. In key destinations, cruise lines adapt their operations to align with the local priorities. You'll hear later about the examples in Tahiti, where the community has decided what limits and capacity they want to put on ships, helping to manage passenger volumes in a positive way while obviously building those long-term positive relationships. And particularly in destinations that are under pressure from tourism, we've seen how that collaborative approach, that collaborative planning, can lead to meaningful and positive outcomes. A good example is countries like Iceland and Norway, where we've been working very closely recently with municipalities and communities through ship visits, town hall meetings, collaboration with tour operators, and initiatives to promote responsible behaviour and diversify the shore excursions. We've received really positive and strong support from community leaders, including at the highest levels, all the way up to the Prime Minister, reflecting the value that we and they place on open, respectful partnerships. And it's really that kind of long-range planning and collaboration that makes cruise tourism a model for managed sustainable growth that we should be encouraging. Of course, cruise tourism also plays a vital role in strengthening local economies, particularly in remote and regional areas, and Fiji is a really good example of that. By sourcing locally, by creating jobs, cruise lines can ensure that economic benefits are distributed further into the community. In many places, cruise lines are now sourcing up to 100% of their provisions locally, which offer guests a much more authentic regional taste of the destination, and of course while supporting growers, winemakers and food producers. And just here as an example, in Fiji, we at the cruise conference a couple of years ago, we actually worked with Tourism Fiji, I think you were Tourism Fiji at the time. We brought suppliers and cruise lines together to be able to demonstrate what they can offer. Protecting local culture and community, of course, is a priority, and these are the assets that guests come to enjoy, and really allow the communities to feel pride in sharing their destinations without compromising their quality of life. We know that a balanced approach creates enduring benefits, and carefully managed cruise tourism can promote cultural exchange, economic resilience, and that long-term focus on cultural and natural resources. By consulting, listening and understanding the needs of local people, we have the opportunity to develop opportunities for the visitor that are culturally enriching, while at the same time providing that economic impact and the jobs that those communities are looking for. And in conclusion, as we look to the future of cruise tourism, it really is clear that our success depends not just on what happens at sea or on the oceans, but of course on the strength of those partnerships ashore. Destination stewardship has to be at the heart of what we do as an industry. We know from experience that destinations which benefit most from cruise tourism are those that embrace collaboration with cruise lines, the ports, the tourism operators, and the governments work together to align visitation with local priorities. Thank you for the opportunity to give you sort of some highlights about the industry, and I look forward to questions on the panel.
So I'm very happy to be here to represent my island's home, the destination, the islands of Tahiti, known as well as French Polynesia. For those who don't know much about Tahiti, we are located not far from here, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, halfway between Sydney and Los Angeles. When we say the islands of Tahiti, we are actually talking about one destination, but 118 islands dispatched into 5 archipelagos on a territory as large as Western Europe. We have a population of 280,000 inhabitants with 327,000 visitors. Those visitors include land-based tourists plus all type of cruises. That's the numbers for 1 year average. So with 99.9% of water and 0.1% of actually land, our territory is obviously a cruising destination for super yachts, yacht charters and cruise ships. And today I'm here to share more about the cruise activities in our islands. So very often when we say cruise, this is what comes to people's mind. Big mega ships, pressure and mass tourism. However, we believe, at least in Tahiti, that there is another model that we can adopt and that can fit with our sustainable tourism strategy. Just in terms of key figures, so cruise represents 34% of our visitors and 20% of our tourism revenue. And in terms of cruise strategy, we really follow 4 pillars. The first one is related to the size of the cruise ships we want in our water. The second pillar is related to the type of cruises we are encouraging in our territory. The third pillar is related to the multi-island itineraries that we really want to push towards the cruise lines. And the last pillar is related to the sustainable cooperation that is possible between the destination and the cruise lines. Let's go a bit deeper in each pillar. So the first one, we do prioritize small cruise ships. Actually, we choose to prioritize the ship that the size fits with our industry local capacity and with the size of our infrastructure and the size of our island and the number of operators we have on each island. That's the whole idea. So in terms of numbers, over 80% of the cruise ships that navigate into our water carry less than 600 passengers. And for the biggest one, like more than 3,600 passengers, they represent only 1% of the fleet that cross our islands. And for those bigger ships, only 3 islands are allowed by law, to stop into those big ships are allowed to stop in only 3 islands over 118 islands. So that's the regulation we put and we set in our destination. And still in terms of regulation, for example, what we start to see with Bora Bora, which is probably the most touristic island we have in French Polynesia, they set a limit of 1,200 passengers. So they decided that just before COVID, 2019, if I'm not wrong, and because they really reach a point where they have to choose the model they want for their island. So the municipality, the local municipality, has set that limit. The second pillar of our cruise strategy is encouraging home port or turnaround cruises. So why? We consider that kind of home port and turnaround cruises have a better economic impact for our destination and for the different islands, because the tourists that comes on that boat, they first pay international flight tickets to come to Tahiti. They book as well pre and or post stay in hotels. So in addition of their time on the cruise ship for their cruise into the different remote islands. So that's really why we encourage that kind of cruises. And around, we have per year 1,000 cruise calls per year, and 70% of those cruise calls are operated by actually 3 home-based ships throughout the year. So what do we call home-based ships? It's really like ships that stays the whole year into the destination. And just to give you an idea, like for those three boats, they go from 180 passengers, and the biggest one has 322, to be very specific, passengers. It's actually a bit less than the whole attendees of the GSTC conference this year, just to give you some perspective. Yeah, so that's the three cruise lines that operate 70% of the cruise call in our destination. The third pillar, promote diversified itineraries. So as you can see, our territory is very geographical, very large, with different archipelagos, different islands. And as Tahiti Tourism as the DMO, one point of our destination marketing strategy is really to promote that our destination is way more than just Tahiti, Mora, and Bora Bora. And the cruise sector is really helping us to bring those tourists over the destination, bring the economic impact and share the economic impact into the different archipelagos. Today we can say that more than 30 islands are getting benefits from the cruise sector, whereas the land-based tourism really impacts 3 to 5 main islands. And another point with cruise activity as well is that it's very complementary. As a DMO, we are working on to smooth out the seasonality of tourism along the year. And what is great with cruise is that the high season for cruise is actually the low season for the land-based tourism. So it's very complementary activity for us. And the last pillar is probably the one where we have more room for improvement. So we encourage as well sustainable cooperation. There's a couple of them that I wanted to share with you today. Is one recent cooperation between the government, the local government, and one of the home-based ships. So they agree on with the cruise line to provide medical service to some remote islands, because you know in some of the archipelagos, very remote archipelagos, they don't have specialized doctors, they don't have tools, they have to come all the way to the main island, to Tahiti. So the idea here is to use the boat, to use the medical center on board to provide those medical services to those local communities. So I think it's a very interesting example of sustainable cooperation. The second one is the mixed cargo and passenger ships. So within the 3 home-based ships, we have Aranui, and it's very iconic boat because when you see half of the boat, it looks like a classic passenger boat, and the other half, if you look at it, it looks like a container ship. So what is great with those kind of ships, and I've been there, is that first it's a local ownership, so it's only Polynesian staff, you can feel the Polynesian vibes on board, and you, as a passenger, you go with that boat into those remote islands and you deliver items and goods. The local communities are waiting, it's once a month, they are waiting this boat, so there is a whole animation around, so you, as a passenger, you really feel better, the lifestyle, the local lifestyle. So we encourage that kind of product, and this company, after 40 years plus in the Marquesas Island, they're gonna release a new boat focused on the Austral Islands in the south of the French Polynesia. So again, helping us to dispatch that economic impact into the different archipelagos. And the last kind of sustainable cooperation is we are seeing more and more cruise lines getting with the local association, more involved into environmental topic. So they are working more with them, and we can see that there is more will from the cruise line to work with local associations, which is a great sign. So as a conclusion, I just want to mention that this strategy is not dated from yesterday. It has been a while that the local cruise sector is gaining structure, and I think one of the key points is the involvement of the stakeholder. I think Joel mentioned that, and we are fortunate to have the private cruise sector very involved and structured with a local private association who is working for the past 15 years with the local authorities and the ports and the infrastructure and the local communities, very important, to make that growth and tourism development more sustainable. So thank you for your attention, and happy to discuss more about it today during the Q&A and later during the network session. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you for a very wonderful presentation. Now I'd like to invite up Jacinta for her next session, and we'll be hearing more about what she has to say from a governance perspective. So, Naka, Jacinta.
Nakali, please allow me to begin by acknowledging the Panua, the traditional owners of the land on which we stand, and I pay my respect to our leaders, past, present, and future. Bulavinak, everyone. If you're not from Fiji, welcome to our home. It's an incredible honor to have you all with us, and I hope you get to stay a couple of extra days in our beautiful country. So just building on to what Joel and Vahere have already mentioned, looking at the marine space in its entirety, I'll focus a little bit more on the yacht sector in Fiji's context, its value over the years, and some of the areas that we hope to focus more on as we go into the future so that we're able to sustain the yacht sector. Just a very quick recap, looking back at the yacht sector pre-COVID. As you can see from the screen, the yacht sector and the marine tourism space is of high value, not just globally, but especially to Fiji and the Pacific as small island developing states. So anywhere around 2018, there was a report that was commissioned by the Market Development Facility. I'd like to thank them for that, which really looked at the sector contributing close to 60 million FJD in economic contribution, and that's really massive. We're looking at direct economic contribution anywhere around 21.6 million and about 35 billion spent on maintenance, repairs, provisioning, fees and charges and tour activities as we went along. And this came from about 721 yachts, looking at about 54 super yachts and about 600 odd yachts. Very quickly, and I'm sure everyone has access to this data as well, but it's a good picture to basically quantify the value of the yacht sector. You know, you have super yachts coming in, staying about 82 days, spending as much as an average 167,000. You're looking at yachts staying over 137 days and having an average spend of about 31,000. So fast forward, and I'm sorry to bring this slide up again, and I know you can see some words like RT-PCR, vaccine, which still gives some of us nightmares, but I really wanted to share a case study of how it was during COVID. Obviously for a destination like Fiji, where tourism contributes close to 40% of GDP, that was especially hard for us. And I know that the French Polynesia, Cook Islands, some of the other Pacific Island countries had a very similar case. It was not just hard on the industry, it was hard on our people, as well as the Fijian economy. So one of the very first things we did was create a COVID-safe economic recovery framework, and this really did allow us to create safe pathways for travel. And of course, you had your repatriation, we had specific categories. We created Pacific Pathway for Pacific brothers and sisters who relied on our national airline for connectivity. But from a tourism perspective, really, the first thing we did was we recognized the potential that the yacht tourism had during that time, and that was really our mainstay. There was no flights coming in, the airports were empty, and the cruise sector was also not active at the moment, so Blue Lanes was our very first consideration just to begin some economic activity. And when this Blue Lanes initiative, which was developed with partners in the private sector like Port Denora, Wunda Marina, and our stakeholders, we could really start to feel some activity happening, even though it was on a small scale, but this really did allow government especially to appreciate the value that the yachting sector has for Fiji. So these are very prelim figures that we had undertaken of about 96 yachts who had come under the Blue Lanes in 2020, contributing as much as 2.4 million in spend. And you're looking at super yachts staying at least 85 days, contributing 59,000, and yachts 215 days staying up and contributing up to 21,000 in spend. And again, so under the Blue Lanes, one of the main expenditure was we're looking at people doing crew change, coming in for repairs and maintenance, as well as it was during cyclone season as well around the Pacific, so giving them safe harbor as well, and that's where most of this spend had come from. We had started with Port Denora Marina on VT level, and eventually we were able to roll up the same and allowing Sabu Sabu port to also be a port of entry under the Blue Lanes. So just very quickly, colleagues, as to what we are seeing today. So we looked at the economic impact pre-COVID, what was during COVID, and what we're seeing now. So this was a report commissioned by Port Denora Marina. which shows really positive impacts of the cruise yacht sector to Fiji. So you're looking at about 831 yachts in 2024, which was a 4% increase, and a direct contribution of about 52.7 million. You're looking at direct government revenue, 11.56 billion, which is where we come in, and we're very happy with that. Government revenue coming in as well. So very quickly, beyond, I can see my time is also up, beyond numbers, this was a picture that was taken by one of our colleagues in Yasawi Rara last year when they had received their first smaller cruise line actually in 2024, and that was after 16 years. This was done again with a lot of partnership and again with a lot of support with the market development facilities, the Itoke Affairs Trust Fund Board, who actually went in earlier to prepare the community to receive guests because it was such a long time. And I think this really was one of the best ways that we see the yacht sector contributing positively, especially to our maritime island economies. Of course, these island economies traditionally rely on fishing for revenue, but then when there is opportunities in marine space, this provides additional economic opportunities as we go. So this is you can see for the Fiji, and this really looks at the distribution of air, visitors who come by air, and how they're concentrated around Fiji. So very similar to French Polynesia. We have similar challenges as well, the key of which is to disperse tourism. I think Denarau, Nandi, where we are, alone would contribute close to 40% of all the visitations. And there are a lot of untapped areas, and even places like Lau, the numbers are so small, they are not reported. You're looking at Vanuatu again, which is our second largest island, who collectively probably get less than 4% of visitors. And so that's where the main strategy is, really looking at how we can open up more destinations, looking at other niche markets that can contribute positively while maintaining the communal way of living and characteristics of these regions. So very quickly, just before I speak on some of the investments that we are looking at to harness the marine tourism space, we are just looking at some of the challenges. With the good comes the bad, and this is all out in the space. We are looking at negative implications of yacht or cruise when it comes to the environmental perspective. We have both from whether it's something as far as anchoring in sensitive areas, or the lack of infrastructure when it comes to waste disposal. We're looking at compliance-related gaps that still exist. We're looking at implications that arise in the future with high visitation in certain areas that have very sensitive ecosystems. We're looking at social implications where communities have tensions, but they may not be prepared to receive visitors, whether they by yacht or by cruise. And we're already starting to see some of this, and this is where I think this forum provides an opportunity to learn from my fellow panelists and our guests to see how we can mitigate some of these strategies as we go. And of course, one of the, remiss if I didn't mention it, some of the other growing challenges of today, looking at the Pacific in general and transnational crime, and how that sometimes has implications on the yacht sector as we go forward. So last year we had launched a 10-year National Sustainable Tourism Framework, and one of the 10 priorities that we have identified is really looking at creating, a competitive destination with a lot of diverse experiences, with a special focus on the yachting sector, the cruise sector, and really leveraging it to ensure the positive impacts that come from it. So one of the first areas we would like to focus on is marketing, really putting Fiji as one of the hubs of the Pacific when it comes to the yacht and marine tourism sector, having more targeted campaigns. Right now we're very fortunate that the private sector has been lifting some of this weight when it comes to marketing, and this is an area, and I know Tourism Fiji also has this in their new refreshed corporate plan to really harness the opportunities that exist within the marine tourism space. Infrastructure, very big one. Again, Fiji too, with limited infrastructure capacity, can only take so much, whether it's your ports or waste management systems, wastewater. There are limitations, but to sustainability, dispersed tourism across, I think there is a strong push to invest in infrastructure. Most recently, Fiji established a National Hydrographic Committee led by the Fiji Navy, and we were working very closely with the Fiji Navy Office and MDF to look at identifying 2 more areas that could potentially be mapped out or improved hydrographic mapping so that we increase more areas that can benefit from the yacht sector. We're also looking, one of the studies we've also seen is taking an audit of all the infrastructure needs from yachts to marine tourism and the cruise sector, and identifying where the gaps are and how we can have sustainable financing options to really leverage this over the coming years. We're looking at compliance. I know there's a strong call, not just from government, but the private sector as well, to have stronger tracking system for yachts entering Fijian waters, as well as the mooring registration systems. In our recent budget, we had announced the establishment of a single window and a yacht monitoring system, so really using these digital tools to not only make it easier, but to be able to track and also oversee yachts that come into Fijian waters as we go. We also mandated the AIS, having that switched on, and I know we had that during COVID. It's one of the requirements, and that has come back as one of the mandatory requirements for yachts cruising in Fiji. Investment in people and product, the most important, I think. And as Joel had also mentioned, really looking at onshore products to be able to match the markets. We've been working very closely with our partners. Last year, we established a new pilot MSME program where we provide access to finance for communities and micro, small, medium enterprises who serve these communities, whether in maritime, yacht, they're people doing cultural activities or guided tours, or really looking at provisioning, looking at those investments, providing trainings, continuously providing trainings for communities as we go forward. We have one of our requirements coming into Fiji is to obtain a cruising permit from our Itauke Affairs, which is our indigenous tourism, indigenous organization equivalent in Fiji. This also ensures that the communities that the yachts enter are also aware of incoming yachts. We also have recently re-established the role of a Rokutui Saravanua, who has been very instrumental, essentially when there is any conflicts or when there is need to create awareness. He's been very instrumental in going out to communities that serve the yachting sector. And I'm sure we're also trying to establish some best practices, looking at cruise sector and yachting, and I know Ili from 70 will be speaking to that as we go in. And finally, on partnership is very important. I can see a lot of partners in this room as we see, but not just partners with the private sector and development partners, but with our communities. And everyone has mentioned this, the need to have community-informed tourism. So very quickly, just to conclude, I think maritime tourism in general, the yacht and cruise sector has a lot of potential, provided we manage it properly so that we're able to sustain it into the future. Pinaka.
Thank you, Jazz, for that session. Really appreciate it. Up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have a representative from Sawani Village, Elisa Petty, or as she likes to be known, Ili, who will be talking from a community perspective on the benefit of maritime tourism in Naka.
Mula Vinaka, everyone. It's a great honor to be here today, representing my community, Sawani Village, at this Global Sustainability Tourism Conference 2025. My name, as already been mentioned, I'm Elizabeth Tabanga, but I'd rather be called Ili. Elizabeth is so long for our visitors. And for the past 25 years, our village has been on a remarkable journey with cruise tourism. My presentation today is titled The Transformative Power of Cruise Tourism from a Sawani Village perspective. I'm here to share our story of sustainable community development and how partnerships have been at the heart of our success. Let me introduce you to Let me introduce you to Sawani Village. My home in Sawani Village is a small traditional community nestled just 30 minutes away from Fiji's capital, which is Suva, and 20 minutes away from the nearest town, which is Nausori. We have 574 as our population, and we have a total of 74 households within the whole village. We are a community deeply rooted in our traditions, our land, and our people. For us, sustainability isn't just a word, it's the very foundation of our way of life. And for the past quarter of a century, cruise tourism has become an integral part of that foundation. We were pioneers in this space, seeing an opportunity not just for economic gain, but for genuine cultural exchange and long-term community benefit. Our cruise tourism partnership. We haven't done this alone. We acknowledge the great work performed by the Ministry of Tourism, and we acknowledge the presence of the Director of Tourism, Fiji, Jacinta. We thank you for being here today. Like I said, we have not done this alone. Our success is built on a strong, trusting partnerships. We work hand in hand with some of Fiji's leading cruise ground handlers, Rosie Holidays, ATS Pacific, and finally, Deki Tours. These companies are our link to the world. They understand our vision, respect our culture, and share our goal of creating a program that is both authentic for the visitors and truly sustainable for our village. They are not just business partners, they are part of our extended family. The Sawani Village Visit Program. So what does this visit to Sawani Village look like for a cruise guest? When the ship arrives in Suva, we welcome the group to our village. At a full Fijian welcoming ceremony, they get an experience that is far from a typical tour. For about 90 minutes, our guests are immersed in our community's way of life. They learn about our tradition, our customs, our culture and our values, and the values that we hold dear. We share our culture through lively entertainment, and we offer a taste of our hospitality with light refreshments. Every single visitor who comes to our village becomes part of our story. And every single dollar that they spend, they pay directly to support our community in the future. Yes, it's been 25 years. 25 years of impact. 25 years of community infrastructure. The financial impact of these visits has been nothing short of transformative. Over 25 years, the revenue generated from cruise tourism has been our primary funding source for major village infrastructure projects. I am proud to say that we have successfully funded and built a new church, a project that cost an estimated 450,000 Fijian dollars. We also constructed a modern community hall, totaling 150,000 Fijian dollars. These were investments that serves at the heart of our village life. And we have built safe, accessible footpaths that connect our community. These are not just buildings, they are a legacy for our children and a symbol of what a community can achieve when working together. Like I said, it's been 25 years. 25 years of impact of social and environmental sustainability But our journey, it's more than just infrastructure. The revenue has also helped us to strengthen our social fabric and protect our environment. It has allowed us to support crucial village ceremonies, from communal works to honoring our departed loved ones. It has also enabled us to directly support our children's education, giving them the tools that they need to succeed. On the environmental front, we have been able to launch and sustain a tree planting initiative on our riverbanks to combat soil erosion. This protects our home, our farmland, and the ecosystem we depend on. These are the projects that truly define sustainability for us. Yes, we are growing. As our program has grown and our reputation has spread, we have a new challenge, a good problem to have. Our community hall, which was a huge achievement for us, can now only accommodate a maximum of 60 guests at a time. With larger groups arriving, we often have to set up temporary tents outside. This is a practical but less than ideal solution. It impacts the visitor's experience, especially in Fiji's unpredictable weather, and it limits our ability to host larger groups efficiently. We need a solution that can grow us, and that is where the Sawani Summer House project comes in. Our next major undertaking is to build a purpose-built, dedicated facility just for our cruise tourist visitors. This summer house will be a comfortable, spacious, and culturally appropriate venue. It will be a place where we can proudly welcome and host our guests, come rain, hail, or storm. This project is at an estimated budget, ladies and gentlemen, and especially so to the Director of Tourism. We are looking at $400,000. And it represents the next chapter in our commitment to sustainable tourism. The benefits of this to Sawani is immense, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen. This summer house is not an expense. It's an investment with multiple returns. First and foremost, it will provide a significantly enhanced experience to our guests. Secondly, it will increase our capacity, allowing us to welcome more visitors to our shore and streamline our operation. And most importantly, it ensures the continued sustainable growth of our program, allowing us to generate more revenue to fund future community projects and further our mission of cultural preservation and environmental protection. Yes, we are calling for action, and we rely on your help, ladies and gentlemen, and especially we know that Madam Director is here of Tourism Fiji, we know that Joe is here. I know that we will get our assistance, definitely from when we tap it from the people. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the story of Sawani Village is a powerful testament to the fact that when done right, cruise tourism can be an incredible force for positive changes. It can fund infrastructure, support education, preserve culture, and protect the environment. We are a living model of sustainable cruise tourism. And with the Sawani Summer House, we are ready to take the next step. Ladies and gentlemen, that ends my presentation this morning. I acknowledge Ayada, thank you for being here. I acknowledge Madam Director of Tourism, thank you for being here, and Joe. And especially so, We will not forget Lay. Thank you, Lay, for being a very good host.
Wonderful. Very, very powerful session there. Thank you so much, Ili. So wonderful to hear what the village of Sewanee is doing. Fantastic. Look, we've had some wonderful questions that have come through from Slido. And if you haven't yet voted for the questions that you would love to hear answered the most, please do so now. And what we'll do is we'll start to go through some of these questions, and I will give it to the panel to sort of answer away. So the first one, of course, Joel, with New Zealand's increased cost of biosecurity requirements, will we see more ships into Oz and Pacific Islands as an alternative destination in the coming years?
A very topical question, and absolutely that is an enormous opportunity for the South Pacific. New Zealand is down 40% this coming season, and you know, as much as we shy away from saying it, at the end of the day, cruise lines are businesses, and when costs go up, I mean everybody knows costs go up, but when costs go up out of proportion to maybe the improvement in services or the broader cost increases, and regulations are put into place that obviously have a we talk about biosecurity, they have a very important role, but at the same time there is no mechanism to clean ships in New Zealand, and you know, it's one thing for a cargo ship to be delayed or moved away, and it adds to cost of cargo. But for a cruise line with, you know, a few thousand people on board, to not be able to complete the itinerary that has been sold, makes it very, very difficult for the cruise lines to include destinations like that into their itineraries. And that's what we're seeing in New Zealand. But that's the opportunity for the South Pacific. To be competitive, to be collaborative with the destinations, with the cruise lines, and make sure that, you know, putting their best foot forward and really sending that message, as Fiji does so well, and Tahiti, that you're open for business. You have your, you know, as we heard, you have your constraints and your limitations, but within those, you are you're open for business and you're welcoming those ships. And that's what the cruise lines are looking for: the certainty of being able to operate, and an understanding. You know, we spoke about the long lead times. So when the cruise lines are planning those 27, 28, 29 itineraries, that they have a sense of what the pricing is going to look like, they have a sense of what the rules are that they're going to have to operate under, as opposed to sort of at the last minute getting significant cost increases, in some cases in New Zealand up to 120% in 1 year, and you know, not being able to know, because you know the reality is biofouling is a natural process, and our oceans down this part of the world are warm, things grow, and you know, for a ship to be turned away at the last minute with passengers who are expecting to visit that destination, it doesn't work for the cruise lines. Sorry, so that was a long way of saying yes. Enormous opportunity for the South Pacific.
Very good, very good. Ili has just left for a few minutes. She'll be back in just a little while, and then we'll get to some of the questions that's been asked for her. But Jazz, this one's just been popping up. Fiji, looking at being a turnaround port, waste management, offloading will have major impacts. What are cross-ministries plans for dealing with this? This one's from Stuart.
Thanks, Lee. And thanks for the question, Stuart. So very briefly, I mean, we're already seeing waste management practice on the mainland as it is under severe constraint. So one of the most immediate steps that government has prioritized is looking for a new landfill to start with for the Western Division, and we're very lucky to have the support of the Asian Development Bank. For that one, I think that was identified as one of the first priorities, looking at the population and the growth around the populated area. And this will be possibly the second landfill. We only have one at the moment in Fiji, that's towards Suva. And for Vanuatu as well, and we have our project management team here as well. We're working with the World Bank to also explore options for waste management. So we have this big project valued at US 200 billion over 10 years. It's not a tourism project, but the very initial investments will really focus on making sure Vanuatu is ready for tourists. So anywhere from waste management to wastewater treatment, landfills. So one of the main ones we're looking at is we're already commissioning a feasibility study soon to see what options are available, looking at the population versus the tourists and how much waste we anticipate producing around that area. And I think that is one of the main steps. There's a lot of calls for recycling, but again, where the waste ends up is the most critical investment that we can do, and we also recognize these are costly investments, so it does take time, too much time, perhaps.
It's a perfect segue into yourself, Harry. There's actually a similar question on waste management policies and arrangement. How does Tahiti deal with that as well? This one was asked by Joel, and I thought it was a good segue.
Yeah, that's not specific to Fiji for sure. And when we talk about cruises, and when I think of waste management, so we have a sustainable tourism plan, and in that sustainable tourism action plan, there are some actions related to the cruise industry and to the infrastructures, and also into the managing the flow of the ships. And I think one of the tools we are implementing on the destination level is very recent. We just launched it. It's a digital tool where it's like a parking slot tool where now the cruise ship are able to book their anchoring location 2 years in advance for the cruise, and it's gonna be available also for the super yachts and for the yachts. So I think there is already some efforts to manage the flow and the number of ships into the destination, and that indirectly will also work on the waste management aspect. So that's what came to my mind with that question. So there is a different way to deal with those issues.
Joel, this one's for you. While Tahiti is targeting smaller cruise ships and we see cruise ships globally becoming bigger, what's your view on this?
Unfortunately, I only had 8 minutes to talk, but I would have liked to give you a better overview of when I spoke about those 81 ships that are being built. The reality is that they're not all big ships. A third are large ships, a third are medium-sized ships, and a third are small ships. One of the key trends that we're seeing in the industry is this desire that our guests have for more authentic experiences, and the expedition market and the luxury market is growing exponentially as a result of that. There are destinations that are suited to big ships and that are happy to accept the big ships, but at the other end of the spectrum, there are destinations that are much more suited for medium-sized ships or for small ships. And the important part of that equation is that collaboration and that partnership and that communication. But just before we started, I told a little story that had come up recently in Australia, where a small destination, the local tourism person in the small destination said he's not sure that they really want cruise ships because it's a small community. They're religious. You know, everything's closed on a Sunday. They go to church, and a cruise ship just turned up on a Sunday and disgorged its passengers into the community, and it was a bad experience for the community. It was a bad experience for the guests. And I said, well, hang on, a ship doesn't just arrive. That booking will have been made 2 years in advance. The cruise will have been sold. Somebody accepted the booking. So really, as a community, you need to sit down, whether it's your port authority or whoever the person is, or the team is that's responsible for accepting cruise bookings, sit down with them and put the limitations around what your community wants to achieve. So that the ship arrives on the correct day when there is something for them to experience and everybody benefits. So yeah, we're absolutely seeing growth in all sizes of ships. And the same applies actually to the guests. Some guests like big ships, some guests like small ships. And I often, people often see the cruise industry as being homogeneous. I don't like cruising, or cruising sounds terrible. Well, I love cruising, and I try and relate it back to the hotel sector. There are all different types and styles of hotels, resorts and budget, luxury, and cruising is no different. There is as we like to say, there's a cruise ship for everyone.
Okay, now that we have Illy back, and we've got a great question now for Illy, which is just timely. Illy, how much time and effort is spent preparing for serving and cleaning up after a cruise tourist visit?
Thank you, Lee. Sorry for that, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very exciting time for us when we prepare for our visitors. We start at the night before. We start the night before doing our intensive cleaning up, getting prep on everything so that everything is ready on the day when our visitors arrive. And like I said, it takes us from the night into the morning, continue into the morning until 9 to 10 when we normally expect our visitors to come in. Like I said, it's a very exciting time for us, and we do look forward to all that time. We try to get our visitors to be so accommodating to all our visitors. We try to do that every day. Like the 90 minutes that they spend with us is well worth that time of them being there with us. And we can only say that we are thankful. Because like I normally tell our villages in Sawani, tourist money is very clean money. And we need to work on that. They come in with all their effort, we have to go into with all our efforts. Thank you very much.
And just on that, Illy, there's a follow-up question. Does Sawani have a special separate tourism committee or group to manage the tours and the income and the bank account for these tours and programs?
Normally we were doing that, but at the beginning of the year, everything has been left. We are being run by the committee that runs after the village. Our bank account is the only bank account that is used by the whole village, but it belongs to Sawani. Yes, everything is run by a committee. Our tourist committee will hand over to the big committee to see that whether we agree on the program that we have set out.
Okay. And this one's more to anyone on the panel, from Danielle. Are sustainable practices in the cruise industry driven more by DMOs, destination requirements, or from traveller demand for smaller, more sustainable options? Anyone like to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I would say if us as a DMO, we are really encouraging sustainable practices, it comes actually from the sources the traveller demand. Definitely, and I think the COVID time really worked as an eye-opener for many travelers and also for many destinations, at least for the islands of Tahiti. But what we also see more and more is that from the cruise lines, especially we are working more with the home-based cruise line who are in our destination for so many years. What you see is that they are really, this is why also we like that kind of cruise line where they stay longer in our destination, they stay years. They have like long-term relationship with tourism operators, local operators, and they are really getting attached to the destination and to the local communities. So you can see that they really want to contribute more and to be more impactful in a positive way for the local communities. The idea of the medical service, for example, it came from the cruise line first, and the local government, they said, yes, let's go for it. So it's not just the government issue, it's really like, it's also the private sector is also willing to be more contributing to the local communities. This is what we see.
Can I just add to that? I agree 100%, but I also think it's actually probably threefold. From the cruise line's perspective, I mean, our business is on the ocean and in the destinations, and our success depends on the preservation of the oceans and the benefit of the communities. And I think you made that point, Lee. We want the destinations to be better off for the ships having visited than if they hadn't, because otherwise, nobody has there's no good outcomes from that. So definitely the cruise lines, the destinations, and then of course the community themselves want, and then what the guests are looking for. And as I said, as the guests look for more authentic local experiences, even on the big ships, there's more of a focus on local food, local experiences. So those, I mean, there's still a place for those sort of big coach tours where they drive past the cathedral, but it's very much now about those authentic experiences and actually getting to know and embrace the local cultures.
Great. We're out of time, ladies and gentlemen, but I will take just one more question. This one's a good one for you, Jazz, which is does Tourism Fiji offer support to villages like Salani from an environmental impact, carrying capacity studies as they grow to combat over-tourism? And maybe this is a good one to chat a little bit about the destination development team within Tourism Fiji and what they do, yeah.
Thanks, Lee. Just on that, on carrying capacity, at the moment there are no specific support that's provided to village by village or community by community carrying capacity, but that is a very important consideration. But how we do tackle this is, at least in here, there's a group of the team from the ministry, they focus on community awareness, as well as Tourism Fiji's destination development team, who go out into communities and sort of sit with them and speak with them, and just to make too much tourists. I mean, they're good, they bring in revenue, but how much is too much? Trying to have those conversations and dialogue, but so as not to go and say like, maybe you should cap it at 100 or 10 visitors, but rather trying to create that awareness and have that conversation to see how much should be ideal. But looking at the bigger picture, more regionally, we do have plans to look at carrying capacity, especially in both in populated areas that are already heavy on tourism. Again, look at the infrastructure and future implications on essential services. But at the moment, we do have those conversations at a sort of more community level.
I may just add to that and bring it, I suppose, back to GSTC. This is the kind of work that GSTC does in communities, particularly. Clea has done some joint projects with them in Europe, in communities that are under pressure, to really understand how cruise can help and contribute to those communities.
Awesome. We've run out of time, and thank you for all the wonderful questions that have come through. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to go through as many as I would have liked, but ladies and gentlemen, can you please thank the wonderful panelists for their time today. Enjoy GSTC, and we'll see you for the Good night, guys.